I was Chris Tomlin's front of house engineer for almost a decade. This year, just last month, was my 22nd Passion Conference.
Wow. Today we are talking with Jeff Sandstrom. He was the front of house engineer for both Chris Tomlin and with the Passion Conference. Through MxU, they provide church production teams resources for technical training, creative communication, and spiritual connection to God and each other.
I didn't see myself as a technician. I saw myself really as an extension of the band. The soundboard is my instrument, and I get to play the band. Like, how can we, as the production team, see ourselves not as a separate team, but worship and production as one team? How can we build a bridge between the booth and the stage, not set up walls? Whatever their context. You don't have to be a touring engineer or work in massive events to have that commitment to excellence and that commitment to really truly seeing yourself as a worship leader. So that's, in a way, like that's really what helped me figure out, like, okay, how can I take that experience and figure out a way to translate that into a live setting through this PA. These guys are on stage working their butts off trying to deliver this song, and they can't hear what the audience hears. They've got their in-ears in, they've got clicks, they've got count-offs, they've got talkback mics. They're not really able to hear what's in the PA. So it's my job to help articulate through the PA what they're trying to do, and I'm the only one who really gets to hear that. Are we able to discern and get clarity between instruments that have the same sort of sonic makeup or take up the same sonic space? Electric guitars, acoustic guitars, piano, pads, vocals, they're all within the same frequency range. So how do we as engineers create some separation? Otherwise, it just becomes this muddy, kind of monotonous thing that is indistinguishable, and then you try to put a vocal on top of that, and it just doesn't make any sense. I think a lot of it comes down to vision from you as the worship pastor, you as the senior leader. What is your goal for the church? If you're singing an Elevation song, is it your goal to sound like Elevation, or are you going to let Elevation be Elevation and let you be your expression to your faith community? No, they've been called to do what they're doing. So don't get caught into thinking that if we don't do this song the way it is on the radio or the way it sounds on the record, then we're not doing justice to the song. There's nothing that says you have to be just like the record to be good. There's no harm in admitting, hey, we can't pull that off. It's fine, we're going to simplify things. I can't have a difficult conversation with someone if I don't know their kids' names. There has to be a way that we've connected as friends outside of rehearsal, outside the context of the task. It's not about perfection. Perfection is idolatry. So how do we make those distinctions? And I think the best way we can is it has to happen through.
Welcome to the Creative Tides podcast, where expert insights flows into everyday creative spaces. We bring you conversations with leaders, innovators, and artists, making high-level ideas accessible and practical for your local context. Discover more episodes and upcoming events at www.creative-tides.com. We're glad you're here. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the Creative Tides podcast. Today we are talking with Jeff Sandstrom. His career started as an independent music producer and engineer starting in 2007, and he did that until 2016. He was the front of house engineer for both Chris Tomlin and with the Passion Conference. He was part of the North Point Community Church since its very beginning, and he's partnered with North Point as well as other churches over the years, helping them train production excellence and engagement both on the platform and off. His heart is to help churches excel His heart is to help churches excel, fully realized through MxU, as they provide church production teams resources for technical training, creative communication, and spiritual connection to God and each other. They partner with church teams so they can get better at what they do while getting better at who they are. He now lives in South Carolina with his beautiful wife, Elizabeth, and their even more superior daughter, Stella, and Lulu, the dog. I love that. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's funny, as I'm listening to you tell people about me, it's funny how some of those things were so long ago and yet have formed me into doing what I'm doing today and continue to do. So, yeah, I was Chris Tomlin's front of house engineer for almost a decade.
Wow.
And have done things with him since. So I was full-time with him from 2007 through 2016, and then have gotten called back for various tours here and there and different events. And you mentioned Passion. It's funny, this year, just last month, was my 22nd Passion Conference.
Wow.
So my first one was '05 when I first served on the production team. And then this year in 2026 was number 22 with them. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
But
and do you know how long the Passion Conference has been going?
Yeah, so the first one was in '97, and then they did another one in '99, and then One Day 2000 was a big event. And they did various things, in the years thereafter. But '05 was like the first year where they did like the big annual. That's what started like the big arena type conference every year. And so it's been in various arenas over the years, multiple cities over the years, stadiums. This year we were in Dallas at the baseball stadium where the Rangers play. It's called Globe Life Field. And that was the first time in a baseball stadium. And it had its own unique set of challenges. But, their heart for serving generations now of college-age students is just really fun to be a part of, and it's inspiring. And I've been really grateful to be a part of what they've done over the years. And, of course, now, it's been well over a decade now that they started Passion City Church in Atlanta. And so now they've got 3 Atlanta campuses and a DC campus as well. So they transitioned from, an organization that focused on live events and conferences to now, having a team that supports 4 local churches. And so that's exciting too, just to see how the vision for their ministry has changed over the years. Yeah. And now they're supporting both, plus the record label that supports music artists and all those things. It's been really cool to see how God has blessed their vision and ministry, and for me to be a small part of that over the years has been really gratifying.
I didn't realize that it's geared towards college students specifically.
Yeah, so they've focused. I mean, the church isn't, but the conference is specifically for 18 to 25-year-olds, really, and they feel like that age and stage of life is a pivotal moment for so many people. It's where you decide your career path and finish your education and are fully launched from the house you grew up in and all those kind of things. And so to put in front of that age person, whether it's a university student or somebody who's already working or whatever, just to put in front of them this vision to live your life as an arrow pointed toward what God has for you and how to leverage your influence in the world toward what He would have you do is it's a really compelling vision. And it's interesting. They've focused on that age group over the years, and I think the reason, in large part, that they've been able to continue it for so many years is because that age group keeps recycling. And so you've got people now, like I was a part of the first conference I was a part of was in 2005, and this year my daughter experienced it as a college student, and so generationally now you've got parents who were at some of the first few Passion conferences whose kids are now experiencing it too. And it's just, it's really compelling and impactful to see what their ministry has been able to do.
Yeah. So how did you come to be part of essentially that first one in 2005?
Yeah. So I moved to Atlanta in the mid 90s after college. I was a music student in college, and realized about halfway through my schooling that I was not going to be a trumpet player in a symphony orchestra. I was a trumpet major and was moving toward like that as a goal. And friends of mine who could play me under the table were getting out of school, not getting jobs in orchestras because there aren't any. When you sign up for a music degree, they don't bother to tell you that jobs are really hard to come by. So I got, I guess it was in my junior year, I decided I needed to find another area of interest in music where I might be able to make a living. So the school I was at the time had just started a music technology program. They built a big recording studio, and so I took a couple of recording classes and kind of got bitten by the production bug then. So I graduated with my degree, but moved to Atlanta after college to pursue life as a studio engineer. And so I worked on a lot of records with some really talented people and some not so talented people in a recording studio
A
in
job's a job,
Atlanta.
though.
Yeah, job's a job. And I learned how to coach people through bad vocal performances and, trying to make, as we used to say, make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. It was, I had some great experiences and then some that were, good learning for me. But got to learn about production, got to learn about the process, got to learn about helping people create arrangements and parts, and bringing together. It's funny, some of the weaker material ended up being some of the most helpful work for me because I had to really dig in and try to figure out how to make something out of nothing. And so, but I learned about just the craft of not just how to record a sound, but how to create a musical moment and how to think like a producer, not just as a technician. And so that morphed into live sound, in that around that time was the time that North Point Community Church in Atlanta was just beginning. And so all of the music that was done for their student ministry, their kids department, preschool songs, all those things, all of that music was recorded at the studio where I was working. So I got to know some of their leadership team and got to be a part of the vision for the church. I was newly married, and my wife and I got married by one of the pastors there, and we just started digging in and attending and serving at the church in its very, very beginning. And so that led to them bringing me in to run sound for various events. And so not Sunday morning worship necessarily, but everything else. So a marriage conference, a student event, a retreat, kids conference, all the things that were happening kind of outside of a Sunday morning, they would bring me in to run sound. And I was really inexperienced with live sound. I just thought, well, if I could take some of what I know from the studio and just pretend that this PA system is my monitors in the studio, see if I can make it sound okay like I would in the studio. So that's kind of what I did, and learned a lot, and they kept bringing me back. And so at that time, my career was about 80% studio, 20% live. And then getting involved with Passion, because all the people on Passion staff at the time, because Passion wasn't a church, a lot of them attended North Point. So I got to know some of them, and they invited me to be a part of their conference. And so 2007 was actually the first time I was mixing audio. The first couple of years I was serving on the production team, but I was doing things like running ProPresenter in a breakout room for Christy Knuckles, who was doing worship leading for a community group type setting, and then doing photography for the media team, just running around the catwalk of the arena taking pictures and just crazy stuff. But then in 2007 they brought me in because it was the first time they had a kind of the main arena event and then an overflow arena that was attached to the arena in a convention center. So they set up basically a 7,000 seat kind of B room. So they brought me in to mix audio for that. And so they had live worship in both settings, and then the talk originated from either location. So they were connected via fiber. So basically each room could see what the other was doing, but they had independent music in each venue. So I was mixing the B room. Chris Tomlin's guy at the time was mixing the A room. And at the end of that conference, that guy, who was Chris's front of house guy, came off the road with Chris to take a job in Nashville as the in-house monitor engineer at the Grand Ole Opry.
Whoa.
And so shortly thereafter, Chris approached me to see if I would be interested in taking his place. And I said, no, I'm happy in the studio. My daughter was 9 months old at the time, and I said I didn't really ever want to be a road guy. And he said, well, why don't you come and fill in for some dates that we already have booked until we find Mark's replacement? So I said, okay, I'll do that. And so almost 10 years later, we found his replacement. So it was, but it was such a great season for me, just
Yeah.
to develop as an engineer, but then to also be a part of what Chris Tomlin was doing all through those years. I mean, the from How Great Is Our God onward through, all the songs and all the events and iconic venues and traveling around the world with him and Passion, just taking this message that he was trying to bring through these simple songs that would give, people in the church a simple way to bring praise to God. It was, I felt like I was truly a part of the team that was doing that, partnering with him to, facilitate what they were trying to communicate. And so, like I said, you know, I think one of the things that served me well was approaching all of that stuff from a musical minded position rather than just as an engineer. I didn't see myself as a technician. I saw myself as really as an extension of the band. And so the great thing is, the soundboard is my instrument, and I get to play the band. And so just seeing things in that way and really partnering with them in their vision for what they wanted the audience to experience, I think is just a different perspective that I think is what I'm now trying to bring to church teams that I work with through MxU is like, how can we, as the production team, see ourselves not as a separate team, but worship and production as one team that are tasked with helping people take a step in their faith. And so how can we build a bridge between the booth and the stage, not set up walls, not create silos? How can we partner together to prepare a place for people to experience what God has for them? That's really what I feel like we're called to do. And so, a lot of what I do now is helping church teams get a vision for that and understand how to communicate that and how to lead up into that sometimes, and really use my experience to help them, whatever their context. You don't have to be a touring engineer or work in massive events to have that commitment to excellence and that commitment to really truly seeing yourself as a worship leader. So that's kind of a short look into the journey, but yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah. I love that you started as a musician, and then that kind of evolved into you being first a studio engineer and then now a live mixer. I feel like that journey of starting in the studio first and then going live is maybe backwards of what people would normally do. I feel like a lot of people, I don't know, maybe not, but start live and then do studio. Did you play any other instruments?
Yeah, so most of what I did in the studio was keyboard oriented. So I would do MIDI programming and some piano playing. But I was really focused on on the engineering side, like getting great musicians to come in, and I was the one kind of capturing those things, working with the artist on arrangements and helping people craft parts and that kind of thing. But I would leave the playing to the expert players, and I would, I could plunk out some things and do some programming of tracks and stuff. But I had the benefit of being surrounded by an incredible group of core musicians that I worked with all the time in the studio, and we made dozens of records together, and it was just so gratifying to be around that kind of musicianship, where I could truly appreciate like what it means to capture this performance really well. And in a way, like that's really what helped me kind of figure out, like, okay, how can I take that experience and figure out a way to translate that into a live setting through this PA. These guys are on stage working their butts off trying to deliver this song, and they can't hear what the audience hears. They've got their in-ears in, they've got clicks, they've got count-offs, they've got talkback mics, they've got their own stuff probably too loud in their own head that they can't hear everybody else. So they're not really able to hear what's in the PA. So it's my job to help articulate through the PA what they're trying to do. And I'm the only one who really gets to hear that other than the audience. And so I'm really responsible for helping to translate what the band is doing for the audience's benefit.
Yeah. That's so important. That's something that, my day job is I'm a worship pastor, and I have a part-time production director that helps with some of the sound and the tech side. And that's something that we try to be really mindful of, is we are all the same team, whether you're at the soundboard, whether you're a musician on stage, like it's all the same team. One doesn't have a job without the other. And I love your perspective of as the guy at the board, how you're mixing, but you're playing the band, like the whole band becomes your instrument. When you talk about helping musicians with arrangements and parts, whether it's in the studio or even in the live context, because they're not able to hear how it's translating, what advice would you give? Maybe there's a sound guy that doesn't play the instruments, but he obviously has the ear because he's hearing, the sound and the potential of it. What advice would you give to help lean into that arranger side from the sound guy?
Yeah, so that's really important. I would say, for example, like if you have two guitars on stage, two electric guitars, just being aware of, like, are they both just kind of banging out chords in first position, holding on for dear life, try not to make any mistakes, or are they really interested in creating a tonality that's unique? So is guitar 1 and guitar 2 actually discernible? Like, can you tell that it's a different tone? It's a different part. One's playing more like just more gutsy rhythm stuff, and one's playing more lead. If there is, if it's a song that they're trying to maybe emulate what's on the record, like, is somebody who's playing the lead line, are they getting it right? Are they playing in tune? Are they playing in time? Like, it's things that I think sometimes we take for granted, but it's so important. Like, if you're playing to a click track, are you doing that well? Are you playing in time? Are you playing in tune? Is your guitar staying in tune through the whole set? If not, it might be the sound guy on the talkback who has to say, hey guys, can you check your tuning in between songs because something's gotten a little sideways? Like, just to be aware that those kind of things happen. Similarly, like with parts, if you're using playback tracks, like from multitracks.com or something like that, like, is your MD downloading all the tracks from Multitracks and then you guys are just trying to play on top of the record? If so, there's probably going to be stuff in there that's confusing or unnecessary. So it's like trying to filter through the tracks to go, okay, what are the things that we can't pull off live on stage? Let's keep those. Maybe it's a shaker, maybe it's a tambourine, maybe it's a synth part. But man, if there's a piano in there and we have a piano player who's trying to play piano, then how are they supposed to do that in a way that is coherent and makes sense? It's like, maybe we have to dump the piano part from the track, or maybe we have to have our keyboard player play something totally different so that they can complement each other. If we're not using those kind of tracks, just within our band itself, are we able to discern and get clarity between instruments that have the same sort of sonic makeup or take up the same sonic space? Electric guitars, acoustic guitars, piano, pads, vocals, they're all within the same frequency range. So how do we as engineers create some separation and some ways for the audience to discern, okay, there's a difference between this pad and this piano and this string part and this guitar part. Otherwise, it just becomes this muddy, kind of monotonous thing that is indistinguishable. And then you try to put a vocal on top of that, and it just doesn't make any sense. So really trying to coach the person behind the console, that part of their role, even if they don't play an instrument, part of their role is to act as a producer in some ways, to try to communicate with the band what's working, and maybe if there's anything that's not working. Like, we would have, for example, on a Tomlin tour, I would spend about a half a day with the music director and all of our tracks, where we would go through song by song, and he would sit with me at front of house and play back what he thought was a perfect arrangement of the tracks. And time after time, he would sit there and go, oh, wow, that cello part doesn't translate at all because there's so much low end in it that the PA just makes it muddy. So I need to re-EQ that part, or I need to do away with it altogether. Or, wow, those pads really get in the way of the clarity that I thought I had in my headphones. Now it's just kind of muddy. There's too much low mid information. So let me tweak that a little bit. Or the balance of this or that needs to be tweaked so that we can get a more clear picture of what we were trying to do on the record that we're trying to communicate live. So just, in other words, taking the time to hear what's happening in the PA. Because if he was just hitting spacebar on Ableton, stuff plays back and he's playing piano on top of it. If he hasn't heard it in the PA, there's no way for him to know if it's really working or not.
Right.
Other than my ability to communicate, like, hey, there's something that's a little funky here. And now, lucky for me, I have the terminology and I have the vocabulary to be able to tell him what it is. Hey, when we transition from, the turnaround between the first chorus and the second verse, there's something that comes in on the second verse that's just not working. It's really weird, whether it's a tonality or a part or something. But for somebody who doesn't know, what to listen for, something just feels clunky, or it just feels weird, or it feels muddy, or it feels harsh, or it feels whatever words you come up with. It's like making the time really to kind of dig into what that might be as a team, I think can be super, super helpful.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you brought up tracks, because I feel like tracks can kind of be a hot topic sometimes, especially when you have a full band live. So what is your philosophy on tracks? What's your preference? Do you use them? Do you not? Like, in your perfect world, what would you do with tracks?
Yeah, so I think tracks are a great tool. I mean, especially if you're a small team that doesn't have the ability to cover all these parts, and you want things to be like the record, like, people know the song, and you want to honor the arrangement as much as you can, but you don't have all these guitar parts that you can cover live. You've only got maybe one guitar player, and he or she is trying to they've got their hands full trying to cover too many things. Like, having those extra parts at your disposal is great. Mm-hmm. I think that the trouble is when we get into the idea that we have to have everything that Multitracks has to offer and then try to play on top of it. That's where it gets confusing for people. So I think, first of all, like, can your band play the song well without any tracks? Mm-hmm. Because a good song is a good song is a good song.
Right.
So you should be able to play a song with just an acoustic guitar or a piano and have it move people. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, then maybe you made the wrong song choice. I mean, I think, and that's okay. Like, not every song is great for your context, but let's say you do have a song that your band can play really well. Then what are the elements in the track that are, first of all, like, is there anything that is part of the hook that people need to hear? Like, if you're doing the Phil Wickham song, This Is Amazing Grace, well, there's that synth. There's that hook that is a particular instrument on the record. Well, if you're not going to do that, then bring it in from Multitracks and have that be a part of what you're playing. That's fine. But if you can cover that live, then I would say lean on the live player, because then when the camera goes to that shot and they see the keyboard player playing that line, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. My ears hear what I'm seeing. That's awesome. So just being discerning in what you're able to do live, and then what you can't do live that you need to pull from those tracks. So maybe it's only some loops or percussive stuff. Maybe it's only a tambourine part. Maybe it's only some gang vocals. Whatever the case may be, just don't be afraid to mute some things in the tracks. Only keep what's essential based on what you can and can't do live with your band.
Right.
And if you're not at the point where you can play confidently and in time with those things, then mute them all and just learn how to play with a click track. Yeah. Like, there's nothing worse than, a band playing out of time with the tracks, because the tempo and the timing of the tracks doesn't lie.
Right.
It's not gonna slow down and speed up with your drummer, right? So, get used to playing with a click track first, and do that well. Play instruments that are well tuned and can stay that way through the whole song, and grow from there. But I think, in general, tracks are a great tool. I will say, though, from the engineer's perspective, once you get to the point where you're playing with tracks and you're doing it well, then the way those tracks are split out on your audio console through your audio interface is important. So I would say, if you have the real estate to be able to split things out, I would say put percussive stuff together on a stereo pair, so loops and percussion and that sort of thing, and then
Happy birthday.
not sure what that was. Sorry, I'm
Balloons
doing
appeared
gestures.
on the screen.
Gestures that are turning into emojis here. Sorry. Have loops and percussive stuff together on a pair of tracks, and then have instruments like synths, pads, guitars, those kind of thing on a pair of tracks. Have BGVs, gang vocals, whatever you're doing, on a pair of tracks. And then if there are any like lead lines or things that are unique, have that on a pair of tracks. So let's say you have those, and then click and guide. So let's say you have 8 outputs on your interface. I would say stereo loops, stereo instruments, stereo BGVs, click, and guide. Those are 8 channels that could come to your audio console. Then your engineer has some independent control on instrument groups that they can mix. If you only have a stereo pair and you've got to have all of your stuff in 2 outputs, then just be really judicious and listen carefully, not just on headphones, but try to listen to it in the PA to make those balances within Ableton or Pro Tools or whatever playback device you're using, so that what's getting out is the best expression that it can be through your PA.
And then how do you balance the blend of that? Because usually these tracks, especially coming from multi-tracks, they're packaged, they're mixed, they're mastered. So now you're meshing that with a live band. How do you make that sound cohesive?
Man, that's an art in and of itself. I think, I will, when I can, I will always lean on the live stuff more. I think, for sure, like, the guitars in the room are going to be louder than the guitars in the tracks, just because I feel like the tracks are there to really support, not drive what everybody's doing. So I would mess with, like, maybe halfway through the song during rehearsal, mute the tracks. And if the song falls apart, then there's probably something that is out of whack. And it may be with what you're doing, mixing the band. I was consulting with a church this last year, and they have a lot of tracks, and their engineers were frustrated because they didn't feel like they needed as many tracks as they were getting. So we went in, they had a recording of their service, and so we brought everything up, and I started by mixing the band kind of where I thought the band could be, and they're great musicians, and so it was sounding really good. And I muted the tracks, and it sounded better.
Oh.
We had a really good conversation about, okay, you guys thought that these tracks were bringing a lot to the table, but we were able to get more clarity, more distinctiveness, more separation, more stereo imaging. All those things were better with fewer tracks. So it's kind of the opposite problem for them. It's like, oh, we didn't know we didn't need to lean on these things so much. So I don't know, there's a lot of ways to approach it, but I think a lot of it comes down to vision, like from you as the worship pastor, you as the senior leader, like what is your goal for the church? If you're singing an Elevation song, is it your goal to sound like Elevation? Or are you going to let Elevation be Elevation? and let you be your expression to your faith community
Right.
in the best way possible, because not everybody's called to be Elevation.
Yeah.
Elevation does a great job of being Elevation, whether it's Elevation, North Point, Passion, Hillsong, Bethel, whoever the case may be. It's like, no, they've been called to do what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get caught into thinking that if we don't do this song the way it is on the radio or the way it sounds on the record, then we're not doing justice to the song.
Yeah.
It's like, no, the song may sound totally different in your context because maybe it needs to, because that's what your people can pull off and that's what your people need to hear. So I don't know. I mean, it's a challenge for sure, but I would say clear vision from the worship leader, senior pastor, worship pastor, whoever makes those calls. It's like, this is what we want our church sound to be. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what we envision would be a ideal Sunday for us, and kind of try to paint that target. Yeah. And because if there's a bullseye on the target, if there's a why behind what we're doing, and if it's clearly defined, then there's two things. One, we can celebrate it when we hit it, and two, it's the only way to evaluate it if we don't. Because if every weekend is a moving target, if nobody really knows what they're striving toward, then people leave confused and frustrated, and it's like, I think I played all the right notes, but is that all I was here to do? Mm-hmm. I hope not. I hope our goal is not just to not make any mistakes. Yeah. I hope our goal is to actually help people take a step in their faith. And so musically, how can we do that? Right. Emotionally, how can we do that? And that's a bigger conversation. That doesn't happen in the heat of the moment of a rehearsal or a run through. Right. That has to happen offline when we can actually process things. We can have conversations like this. Mm-hmm. We can actually pray together as a team to see what does God want for us in terms of vision, mm-hmm. and how can we bring clarity to that for our volunteers, to our team on stage, so that our drummer every week can walk in knowing this is what our expectation is. Here's our goal for you. Here's the bullseye on the target. Mm-hmm. And, they can walk away going, man, I nailed it today. Or, man, that wasn't quite right, but I know why, and I can work on it for next time. So yeah. I know that's vague a little bit because it's hard to be specific without particular context, but it can be really rewarding for a team who has some clarity around that vision and gets to celebrate it by talking about what each other did great. Yeah. Like, a lot of us get into this trap of evaluation mode where we talk about what went wrong and we don't really focus on what went right, mm-hmm. because we don't really know what right is in the first place. Like, if you don't know where you're headed, then there's nothing really to encourage people with, because nobody knows if they were moving toward the same target. So that's a big topic for me. It's a bit of a soapbox, but that's so important. And it's actually a conversation I've been having with a lot of people lately, of leaning into your local context and the skill. And that's really, with Creative Tides, our hope is we bring these resources alongside creatives and musicians to help amplify their skill and where they want to go, rather than us coming in and saying, hey, it should look like this. We provide the resources and tools so they can take their next step in whatever their trajectory looks like. I think it can be overwhelming from a leadership standpoint to figure out, okay, how do I narrow that down and clarify my goal, especially when we have all of these, major worship bands that are really kind of setting the model of worship music, the big guns that you named, like Elevation, Hillsong, Bethel. And then we have tools which can be very helpful, like multi-tracks, where they're taking all those songs and they're giving it to us in bite-sized pieces where we can solo individual tracks. And we could potentially, if we worked really hard, try to sound just like them. It kind of reminds me of, now we're in the age of streaming. As I was a kid growing up, we had cable and there were a handful of channels, and what was on was what was on. But now you have Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all these platforms, and I sit down to try to watch something and it's like, there's so many options. It's daunting. Like, I don't even know where to start. So this is a big question, but with those bands and all those tools, what advice would you give a local church team of how they hone down and clarify their sound for their context, still utilizing tools, but not trying to be fill in the blank worship band?
Before we jump back into today's conversation, we just want to say that we're so glad that you're here with us. And today's conversation is sponsored by us, Creative Tides, and by you. This show exists to bring expertise locally, real voices, real insights, and practical wisdom into your local creative context. As a nonprofit, everything that Creative Tides does is made possible by people who believe in that mission. If this podcast has served you, one way that you can support is by going online and making a one-time or recurring donation, or by purchasing something from our merch shop. As a thank you for being with us, we would love to offer you 10% off the merch of your choice. Head to creative-tides.com/merch and use code podcast at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Every contribution helps us to keep hosting conversations, offering resources, and bringing that wisdom closer to home for you. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming videos, resources, or events. And thank you for being part of this work with us. Now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah. A lot of it has to do with your team and what they can actually pull off. I mean, I think, it's hard if you're a bivocational worship pastor and you've got all volunteers and you've got a bass player who's just learning how to play the bass, much less learning how to put that in context of playing in a band. It's like, man, everybody's holding on for dear life just trying to get through the song and playing the right notes at the right time. Versus you've got another band who plays together all the time and does conferences and other events and maybe a small tour. They write their own music. It's like there's such a wide variety of the spectrum of, ability and all that. I'll go back to the idea that, a good song is a good song is a good song. And so if it moves you, if there's something lyrically that ties to a particular sermon series or is just straight up gospel, like I would lean into those songs that move your heart through scripture or through imagery or through poetry, rather than just, oh, it's got a nice beat and I can dance to it. It's like, it's such a heavy thing that we carry. It's like, this is like music was created to connect with the human heart in such a way that, like, it's the inexpressible things of emotion and spirituality that are part of music that moves us. Mm-hmm. So let's try to focus on that part. And, it is daunting because you're faced with a lot of decision fatigue. Yeah. When you've got all these inputs coming at you, all this potential, all the things. And, from a practical standpoint, I would say, like, if you've got all these tracks and multi-tracks for this particular song and you only have, it's written for a male vocal, you have a female singer that can pull it off. So when you pitch shift all the tracks to change the key and they sound weird, okay, we're not using those tracks. Like, if we can pull off this song, I shouldn't have to pitch warp all of these BGV tracks to make it sound like it's in the right key when it was never meant to be that in the first place. And that's no shade on multi-tracks. They do a great job. But there are things that I think tend to sound over-compressed, it's like, it just sounds weird if you try to manipulate it too much. You put it in Ableton or put it in playback and you change the key too much and it just sounds like, that doesn't sound like the vocal anymore. Like what, so just be mindful of that and try to be judicious in how you approach that, especially when it comes to manipulating things too much. Yeah. There's nothing that says you have to be just like the record. And there's nothing that says you have to be just like any of those bands to be good. Like, you need to be who God has called you to be for your expression of the faith community. And, if you're, like, there's no harm in admitting, hey, we can't pull that off. It's fine. We're going to simplify things. It's great. Because hopefully the song stands on its own. Mm-hmm. And you can if you're bringing the right heart to it and have a heartfelt version of it for yourself that moves your people, then well done.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. As you are, the sound engineer for the band and you're helping them understand how it's translating to the room. So you're playing an essential role to that crafting of their sound for their local context. Musicians, myself included, as artists and creatives, we can maybe be a little sensitive because it's our art, it's our personal expression. How do you strike that balance of giving feedback that is critical feedback, like, hey, you're out of tune, your timing's off, your part doesn't sound good with the band, like giving real constructive feedback without stepping on toes?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, there has to be a trust relationship that happens outside of the heat of the moment of that context. In other words, if I don't know you as a singer, if I walk in, if you brought me in this weekend to mix your band and I'm hearing things during run through, I'm not going to get on a talkback mic and say, Ashley, you're really flat during the bridge. We need to work on that. And then go. Nobody knows who I am. Mm-hmm. I have no relational capital. I have no credibility. Nobody knows my experience. They don't know that I produce thousands of vocals in the studio. They just know, who's this jerk yelling at Ashley over the talkback? She's my friend. How dare you? Right? So there has to be relationship. We've said over MxU for years, we've said, I can't have a difficult conversation with someone if I don't know their kids' names. Mm. It's like, there has to be a way that we've connected as friends outside of rehearsal, outside the context of the task. Mm-hmm. It's in a team night. It's in a meal together. It's in a retreat. It's in a green room after a service where we're just hanging out, having lunch, whatever it is. It's like, I have to have the relational equity to be able to spend those chips, because then, like, if we have a common hobby, if our friends are if our kids are on the same soccer team, if we're friends outside of church, if we're neighbors, if we're going through something, I know you're going through a tough transition at work, and so I'm there for you as a friend. Like, then, if you're a little flat in the bridge, I can say, hey, Ashley, it feels like you're pushing a little too much in the bridge and the pitch is getting wonky. Mm-hmm. It's only about the pitch. It's not about our relationship, because you know that we're good way beyond what's happening in that moment. And so the only way for that to happen effectively is if the other stuff is in place. Yeah. Because otherwise it just becomes, oh, you think I'm a bad singer? Oh, and then it's a ding to your identity, right? Because if I only know you as the singer, if I only know you as the guitar player, and then I talk to you about your guitar tone, then I'm coming at who you are. It's like, no, it's not about who you are. It's about the E string is just a little sharp. Let's just tune it up, right? So again, that vision though has to come from leadership. It's like, okay, we're gonna have a culture of feedback on our team, but it's not a culture of criticism. Mm-hmm. It's not a culture of, perfection. We're trying to create a culture of excellence because we believe excellence is worship. It's actually in the Bible. Psalm 33:3, sing to him a new song and play skillfully. Mm-hmm. Shout for joy. It's like, we want to be skillful in what we do. We're going to raise the bar as much as we can to kind of help you level up in your skill. But it's not about perfection. Perfection is idolatry. Mm. So how do we make those distinctions? And I think the best way we can is it has to happen through relationship. Yeah. There has to be a bridge built from the booth to the stage that's built on trust.
Yeah. So does that same principle apply so going back to, you started touring with Chris Tomlin and his band. So now you're working with a group they are professional musicians. They're playing together all the time. I would imagine there's some crossover of the musicians playing on his album in the studio and those playing live.
Sure.
You're in an arena, so there's quite a bit of physical space between stage and booth. So what does that communication dynamic look like with that type of band?
Yeah, so for us, the connection, like, we got to the point where there was a lot of trust, mm-hmm. where every night or every day after sound check, Chris or Matt, the MD, or Daniel, the guitar player, would come up and say, hey, is everything working? How's it feeling out front? Are we all good? During production rehearsals, there would always be conversations. Hey, Jeff, how's it feeling out there? What do you think? What do we need to change? But that happened over time. The best time that happened, though, I always tell teams, like for us, the relational stuff would always happen on an off day at the movie theater or the golf course or after the show on the bus going to the next city. There's always after show food. So over a pizza, we're connecting and we're talking about the show, but not just about the show. We're talking about sports. We're talking about politics. We're talking about what's on TV, whatever it is. We're getting those kind of relational moments where we can build camaraderie and we build trust so that when we do have to talk about what happens on stage, we can do that as friends, not as just this distanced relationship. And then, so I'll ask teams like, where's your tour bus? Like, where are you making those connections offline, outside of the heat of the moment of a rehearsal or a service? Like, where are you forming those moments where you can actually connect and have conversations that aren't related to, on an off day, we got to the point where with the crew, we would have a meal on an off day and be like, all right, for this whole meal, we can't talk about gear or gigs because crew guys are notorious. That's all they want to talk about is, oh, you remember back in September, we had this thing and there was that guy and we did that. What a day that was. And it's like, okay, that's fine. We'll talk about that gig, but you always tell that same story. Like, tell me how your kids are doing. Tell me what you think about what's happening in France right now or whatever. It's like, let's have a conversation about ideas. Let's talk about something other than the new piece of gear that we're all going to get or the gig that we did. And it just helps. It's one of those like, oh, there's a life outside of this and we're connected beyond just these sort of common skills that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. In that life on the road, touring life, I can imagine there is a lot that comes with that, a lot of successes and wins and a lot of challenges. What was some of the most rewarding things about touring and some of the most challenging things?
Yeah. So for me, the most rewarding, whether it's, I've been with artists other than Chris. So, there were all those years with Chris Tomlin, but then, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Lauren Daigle, Passion, Matt Redman, I've had a lot of great opportunities. I think for me, the highlights are always like big shows in iconic venues, like going to Red Rocks for the first time or Madison Square Garden or Radio City Music Hall, like these iconic venues. I will forever have those fondest of memories of working with, like Radio City Music Hall, for example, hearing from the audio lead from the local stagehands union in New York City, the history of the venue and all of the stories that he had to tell about just the legacy of a place like that and getting to stand on the shoulders of people who'd been there, generations before and just how meaningful that is to me as someone who gets to help make music in a place like this. It's like, highlight of my career for sure. So those were always the most rewarding. And then, particularly with, faith-based events and concerts, like helping to, like, I always felt like I was a worship leader just as much as the person on stage. So for me to feel like I was helping this couple at the end of the row who came in a fight and they end the night arm in arm worshiping together. It's like, for me to have a hand in that, to help people, like I could look around and just see how people were moved in their faith. I think it's just, it's a pretty weighty thing to be a part of that kind of moment. So those moments are things that I'll always look back and say, oh man, that was special. Yeah. Now, as far as challenging, there's a lot of hard days. The road can be grueling, especially, the hardest part is when you're on the road being a part of one of these moments, and then something's happening at home that you have no control over and you can't help with. I remember we were in Tokyo. My daughter was 3 years old. I was in Tokyo with Passion as part of this world tour that we were doing in 2008, 2009, and my daughter is figuring out that she's got allergy stuff and asthma that's going on and is going to the doctor as a toddler. My wife is here trying to figure out what we're going to do for our kid, and there's nothing I can do to help. I'm, 14 hours by flight away and 12 hours time zone difference. It's like, well, I can't do anything, babe. I'm sorry. And, being away for stuff like that is always really hard. Other challenges are just like some venues just suck. Like it's a really hard load in, or a really kind of, you get to a certain point where you go through the A market arenas and then you're in B market and then you do some theaters and all of a sudden you're doing, the best venue that this city in the middle of nowhere has to offer. And it's this just beat up War Memorial Auditorium that should have gone the way of the dodo bird. And here you are trying to hang a PA in a room that was never meant to have a rock and roll show in it. So, but those are also the moments though that build camaraderie and build the team. And, that's, you get through a day like that and you realize, okay, we're pretty special. Like this group of folks, if we could pull that off, we can do anything.
Yeah. Were you simultaneously working with, when you were touring with Chris, were you working in the studio with him for studio albums?
Not really. I was, there were a couple of times where I would help them record some demos in Chris's studio, but they did all of their recording with other producers and other engineers who were specialists in that area that Chris had worked with for years. So I was around some of the recordings, but I wasn't actually doing the engineering.
So did you, in 2005, when you started with Passion, at that point, did you kind of switch fully to a live show?
Yeah, so studio? I think I said a while ago that it was like 80% studio, 20% live. And then over the course of the next few years, it kind of changed. So it was like 80-20 the other way. So I still kept my hand in some studio stuff, but it was really just the availability of time. I just didn't have the time to dedicate to it as much anymore. So I kind of moved away from, but I still occasionally do some stuff. I'll do some mixing for people, or I'll do, I had a meeting before we got on the call today with a guy at our church. We want to start recording some of our own music. And so he was talking about bringing me in to do some recording with them. And so I'll get to record and hopefully mix some of that stuff, and that'll be great. So, I still try to keep my hand in it just to be able to, figure out if I still know how this stuff works, which is good.
Do you have to kind of do a different workflow or like think in a different way when you're mixing studio versus live?
A little bit. I think, the great thing about live is that it's all real time. Like it's, if you miss a cue, it's gone. Like so you've got to really be attentive and you've got to be leaning in, anticipating, trying to figure out, okay, how can I make this moment happen in the room live in real time? That's exciting in a different way than you have unlimited undo and unlimited, additional takes and things that you can do in the studio that you can really, it's a different kind of focus, right? You can really be micro-focused on, getting things as close to perfect as you can, and capturing that. Whereas live, it's like, well, that moment's gone. It's never coming back. So I hope we got it right, because it felt pretty cool, but we're never gonna feel that again. Yeah. So anyway, it's two different sides of your brain in a way, but equally fun and gratifying.
Yeah. So now you've mentioned it a little bit, but now you've transitioned somewhat into working with MxU. Can you tell us what that is, how it started, what you guys do?
Yeah. So MxU started. We did our first live event in 2016, actually. So it's been a decade. Actually, a couple weeks ago, I was at the NAMM show in Los Angeles, and it's a big trade show for music equipment and, It's the National Association of Music Merchants. So it was 2016. The co-founders of MxU and I wanted to have a way to really, it started because we wanted to be able to challenge each other. Like, I was doing touring. The other two guys were big production directors at large ministries, large churches. And we were together at a conference. And I said, man, we never have a chance to like learn from each other and ask each other questions. Like, I can't go to you at a church service and say, hey, solo your snare drum for me and let me hear what you're doing. Because it's a church service. They can't walk up to a Tomlin show and say, hey, solo Chris's vocal real quick so I can hear what it sounds like with those effects. Like, no, it's not practical. So we decided, what if we got our consoles and some tracks in a room and just got to play back stuff for each other and ask each other questions? And then we thought, you know what, I bet other people would want to eavesdrop on that conversation. So what if we did that? So in 2016, the day before the NAMM show, we set up consoles. Saddleback Church was gracious enough to lend us a room for the day. And we had about 100 people come and listen to us talk about mixing. And so that's how it started. We did a few events that same format over the next couple of years. 2016, I think we did 4 of them. 2017, we did about 6 or 7. And then 2018, we were doing it more and decided, there's no real way to scale this to get more people to have access to it. So we need to put some of this content online. Mm-hmm. So we recorded about 75 what we thought were super basic videos about audio production in live settings in churches. And so we put it online and people started subscribing, and it was, we were really surprised by how much people engaged with it. So we decided to create more content and more. And now MxU is, I would say, kind of the platform for training and development of church production teams. So we're really concerned with, recruiting, training, and retaining a healthy church team. And so we have now over 1,100 videos about audio, video, lighting, leadership, music directing. We have stuff for worship teams and production teams. And, we're really striving for it to be more than just a video library of training. I mean, it really is a learning management platform for a production leader to bring their team through full onboarding as part of the team, plus training, plus tools for retention as well. We have planning center integration now built into the platform. We have quizzes and assessments that are attached to each course, so you can track your team's progress. You can, really know how your team is developing and growing. So we're really excited about what's happening, what's to come. We have a podcast as well and a bunch of YouTube content, so people can check it out at getmxu.com. And maybe they've already seen us on YouTube and the podcast and whatnot. But we just love interacting with church teams and love just kind of the community that we're building. So I hope that people will continue to jump on and plug in, because we're really trying to provide resources that are helpful.
Yeah. It sounds awesome. If people wanted to get involved more, so probably follow and subscribe, but what would be other ways that they could get involved?
Yeah, we've moved away from the live event model. We're not really doing in-person events much anymore. But this year I hope to do something. So, just be on the lookout. Our social media is out there. And again, getmxu.com is the website. I'm at MxU Jeff if you want to reach out personally on Instagram. But yeah, we're trying to make some stuff available free on YouTube as well. So if you just search MxU on YouTube, you can find our channel, and our podcast is there every week. So we're really trying to provide helpful tools for church teams, no matter what level and no matter what scale. We really do care about smaller local churches who are led by maybe a part-time staff person, a bunch of volunteers, all the way up to the largest of mega churches. So I think we have something for everybody, and hope you'll find us and jump into what we're doing.
Yeah. Incredible resources. We'll be sure to link all of that in the description of this video. But thank you for doing that. That's so needed, and just appreciate you and your friends kind of starting it and seeing the need and then wanting to offer your expertise and provide that to, like you said, churches of any scale, any level.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, really, really great resource. My last question for you, I like to kind of ask a fun question. Could you walk us through your rig rundown? What gear do you like to use? What's your favorite?
Yeah, so it varies depending on the size and scale of the event. Typically on a tour, we've been on Digico consoles for a long time. So Digico console with waves is kind of the standard setup. Most recently, Digico 338, I think, was the specific platform. I did a couple months ago, I guess it was back in November, I had the honor of being a part of an event called Beyond a Billion. It was YouVersion celebrating the billionth download of the Bible app.
Wow.
And so it was a big arena event in Oklahoma City. And we had Digico SD7s at front of house monitors and broadcast. And it was a full band with a 46-piece orchestra, 50 voice choir. Everybody had their own mics. It was a lot. It was crazy, but it was so fun. I mean, it was the house band was kind of, consistent throughout the night, but then it was CeCe Winans and Phil Wickham and Brooke Lidgertwood and Lauren Daigle, Chris Tomlin, Matt Redman, all, who's who of worship leaders coming up, and everybody did one song basically. And it was great. So for that, it was a big, large format Digico console with waves and so much fun. At my church, we've upgraded to the new Waves LV1 Classic console platform. And I've also used that with a bunch of training events that I've done a bunch of MxU content around that console. So other than like the big, massive sort of large format Digico desk, the LV1 has become my favorite mixing platform. I love the fact that it's such a small footprint. It's all kind of plug-in based with a massive touchscreen, and the workflow is just really, really cool. I love the way it sounds. I love the flexibility and expandability of it. I'm kind of an evangelist for waves on that console, so I love it. But it's funny. I think, no matter what the tool, I think, because I mixed on a lot of different console platforms, and I think, I don't know. It's like you've got to know the song, you've got to understand the music, you've got to have a clear intention of what you're trying to create, because there's not necessarily a magic bullet in a particular console manufacturer's platform or idea. It's like there's things that I prefer in terms of workflow and ergonomics and all that, but whether it's Waves, Digico, SSL, Yamaha, Allen Heath, you can get great results on just about any platform. I think it's really just kind of being a master of your tool and having a great sort of internal library of sounds that you're trying to emulate through these tools. So I would say to a beginning engineer, it's like, what are you actively listening to? Like, what are you, like, practice deep listening. Have some, because we're bombarded by music so much all the time. It's like, try to turn off some of that noise and create for yourself a discipline of, deep listening. Like, can you just put on some headphones and spend a half hour just listening to, let's say, some of the great Grammy-winning records over the years, no matter what genre. Like, okay, here's an album that somebody decided, actually a lot of people in the music industry decided, this is the best album of the year. So what is it about these songs that made people say this is the best?
Yeah.
And start to think, okay, what is it about this snare drum? What is it about this vocal? What is it about this bass guitar that made people say this is the best? And then, is there anything I can do to craft that kind of sound in the tools that I have to work with? Like, what can I learn from this drum sound that I can take to my drummer this weekend and help our church service be better because of what I can do with these sounds. And just start to develop a library of those sounds in your head to go, okay, it's this kind of snare, this kind of kick drum, this kind of acoustic guitar, this sound in a piano. Like, that's what I want to go for. And, try to figure out how to leverage the tools that you have to craft some of that tonality and really challenge yourself to get better. And, it's easy to blame, an amateur musician, but it's like, okay, well, that's what you've got to work with. So what can you do with their piano tone or their guitar tone or the sound of their drums to challenge yourself toward making it more like these things that you hold up as an ideal.
Yeah.
So,
and then you get to the board, and what's your workflow?
Oh man. So generally speaking, digital consoles have pretty customizable layouts. So you can basically make any console into what you want it to be. So if there's multiple fader banks, like let's say we have a left bank and a right bank, I will generally have all the band instruments on my left in banks. So I'll have drums and bass, or just drums. And then the second layer will be bass, keys, guitars, tracks, depending on how many channels I have to work with and how many inputs there are. It'll be drums on the top layer, then instruments, then maybe tracks on the third layer, and then playback stuff like video playbacks, talkback mics, Spotify, that kind of thing. So that's all on my left side in banks that are consistent, that are color-coded per instrument group. And then on my right side, I'll have vocals, vocal effects, speech mics, and then in the center section, if there's a center section of faders, that's where my DCAs, matrices, groups, that kind of stuff will be. So left to right, I'll have far left will be band, far right will be vocals, then the center will be master type inputs. And that for me is just a general, like I always know that the first fader in my index finger of my right hand is always going to be my lead vocal. And so if I'm on layer 1, I just know that that's my go-to.
Yeah.
And layer 2 might be the pastor's mic, or, just establishing some of those muscle memory type things where I know, okay, left side, fader bank 1, input 1 is my kick-in mic, and it's just always the same. Fader 3 is my snare top. It's just always, so I know exactly, so I can look at the stage and not have to worry about always looking down at the tool, because I know where things are so that I can actually pay attention to what's happening on stage.
That's so good. That's a really good tip. It just becomes muscle memory, and you're still actively mixing, but you're able to watch the band.
And that's the other thing I would say in general is encouraging young, growing engineers that mixing is an active pursuit, right? Our job is not to just sort of set everything up, push the faders up, and stand there hoping nothing breaks. It's like, no, I want to play the console. I want to be able to anticipate the guitar lead in the turnaround between the first chorus and the second verse. So I'm going to know where those faders are so that when that moment happens, I can be there to goose those faders and make sure that everybody knows, oh, that's the musical hook. That's the thing I need to hang my hat on that tells me what this song is. And then to know exactly where that lead vocal fader is so that if they're singing low in their register and I need to dig out some of that tonality because they're not projecting as much, I can ride that vocal so that I can help them communicate what they're trying to say. Mm-hmm. If it's just, okay, well, the vocal's there and the fader's up, my job is done. No, it's not. Your job just started.
Yeah.
Your job is to actively mix the song. I need to create an arc of emotion. I need to follow the arc of the worship set. I need to take people on a journey. The best way to do that is, hey, these faders move. Like, they're not just set and forget. Mm-hmm. I need to dig in and help the band make music.
Yeah. Yes. I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
I'm glad you agree.
I do agree. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing and all your insights. And it's been really encouraging for me. And I think it'll be impactful for a lot of people. So,
well, thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to connecting with people. So feel free to reach out and look forward to see what Creative Tides is doing in the future. I love connecting with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Creative Tides podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on social media so you don't miss any upcoming videos, resources, or events. If you'd like to support Creative Tides, including events like workshops or tools like this podcast, head to our website, creative-tides.com, to make a donation or purchase merch. Thanks so much for being a part.